I wish my parents were alive to hear that great introduction. Well, first of all, when I look out and see the faces here, I see a lot of faces of South African Jewish leadership aristocracy of different generations here. There are some people who were really great leaders in South Africa and afterwards in Israel. And I think you all chose correctly by coming here. I think you're having a heck of a lot more fun than all of those Jews in Sydney and Toronto and La Jolla and the other places. Believe me, they're bored to death half the time. They've got to play golf all the time. And when they listen to the news, it's not that interesting for them. But when we listen to the news, it's interesting. Believe me, if they manage to build the 531 highway from Highway 6 all the way out to Herzliya, okay, it's our highway. You know, it belongs to us. So you made the right choice. And I'm sorry that David doesn't get the sports that he wanted, or the soccer teams that make it to the World Cup, or the cricket teams that do, but there's the next best. Secondly, I'm having a lot of fun actually by being at IDC Herzliya. We've got 50 Ethiopian students in addition to these two young women over here. And that's a lot of fun. We believe in that. We are a Zionist university actually. Not afraid to say that we're a Zionist university. I do know one or two universities in Israel that would not say they're a Zionist university because they wouldn't want to offend anyone. And we say, you know, Notre Dame is Catholic, Georgetown is Jesuit, Yeshiva University is Jewish, IDC is Zionist. We're not afraid to say it. We say it proudly. And if someone doesn't want to come to IDC because they are insulted, they can actually attend a great university in Cairo called Al-Azhar. Okay. It also has a Z in it, okay? And, so they can go there. It's a great place. And that's the way we feel. We don't take any money from the Israeli government, what we sometimes call the Bolsheviks in Jerusalem. The civil servants there. We don't take any money from them. And the whole idea of my president was to build a university in order to do something for Israel and not take anything from Israel. And so basically part of our mission statement is to also make the case for Israel. And we do that sometimes together with Stand With Us, which is a great organization as well. And truth to be told, that's a fantastic organization. It's like a commando unit, which makes the case, with an intelligence officer in the back working 24 hours a day named Morris. He still thinks he's in World War II. And great man, actually. Great man. He's the secret to a lot of success. I also want to welcome Annette Milliner here, who had a bad time a few weeks ago, and here she is, in her splendor and glory. The beauty queen. The beauty queen of Saldanha Bay. The Saldanha Bay beauty queen, okay? On my right here, I see Nick Aladeff, one of the top Rhodesians I've ever met in my life. Okay, but I can't mention all the names of the people here in the audience because I'll get into huge trouble. Okay, now I'm here to basically talk about this mission which we had in South Africa. And basically, it's just a modest contribution really on the part of IDC, and I don't make myself out to be an expert on South Africa. I lived there for a number of years, but it's always a danger to come to an audience like this and claim to be an expert. The only thing that I think I did understand is that if Jews from Israel, who are African Jews, who say we're Jews first, we're Israelis second, and we are of African, Ethiopian ethnicity and background, it's a very, very powerful thing to say in a country like South Africa, which is mainly African. And I think that it's exotic, and I think that it creates a buzz. And I think that when students like this come out and make the case for Israel in a very, very nice way, a lot nicer than the way I would do it sometimes, I think that it makes a great impression, and a great impression they made, in my view, especially in one-on-one conversations and so on and so forth. IDC Herzliya has been sending these students also to the United States, also to the United Kingdom, also to Holland, and we get requests now from different communities to send individuals there. We just sent a number of students to Florida, where they spoke, and they take them out to the schools, and they take them to churches, especially African American churches. It's a very interesting thing. We sent a group of 9 students to the south of the United States, which, by the way, for all intents and purposes, was apartheid until the 1970s. Even there was no such legislation. Okay, I mean, there were no blacks and whites in the south of the United States until the 1970s, being in the same schools. And that's 110 years after the Civil War. Okay, some South Africans who don't agree with my views don't like it when I say those things. They don't like it when I say that 70% of prisoners in American prisons happen to be African Americans, even though they make up 12% of the population. Okay? People don't like to hear those kinds of things because they think that I'm giving apartheid a discount or something like that. They also don't like to hear when I say that if you call Israel an apartheid state, you're basically calling many Holocaust survivors who survived the Holocaust and had to live under the Nuremberg laws, which were actually worse laws than the apartheid laws, because those laws end up with dying, systematically being murdered in concentration camps. When you say that to some people who I met in South Africa, they'll tell you, how dare you even consider the fact that the Holocaust was worse than apartheid. Okay? Some Jews who spoke to me in conversations that we had, or how can you mix the two? And I think it is important to mix the two. When someone calls Israel an apartheid state, it's actually a double, I would say, horrible thing to say about a Jewish country or about Jewish people who suffered the most from apartheid in the world due to what happened in the Holocaust. But I'm not going to talk about negative things. I'm just going to give you on a macro basis some ideas that I had. I feel that there's tremendous, tremendous poverty in South Africa. Tremendous poverty. And when you drive around the Cape, you see encampments of South African blacks and all kinds of migrants. And they're not even living in regular homes. They're living in tents. They're living under plastic. They're living under all kinds of stuff. And believe me, I've seen Palestinian refugee camps. I've seen them all over Lebanon. I've seen them in Syria with my own eyes. I've seen them on the Syrian. I've seen them in Judea and Samaria and other places. And trust me, when I take a look at the per capita income of the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, and of the Israeli Arabs, okay, I'm not even going to talk to you about the fact that the per capita income is higher than Jordan and Syria and Egypt and all of the other surrounding countries here. I'm not even going to get into that. But when I see what's the poverty in South Africa, it's far worse than anything that's happening here. I mean, Israel has a big gap between the rich and the poor, and in the OECD, we're not great stars. And there's a lot we need to do to narrow that gap. But in South Africa, the gap between the rich and the poor is insane. It's to the point of insanity. And actually what that breeds, to a great extent, that poverty, in the Cape. It's a known fact right now that there are a whole bunch of immigrants coming into the Cape from Pakistan, for example. And they're opening grocery stores in all kinds of different towns and hamlets. And in the back of those grocery stores are little rooms where people daven, okay? They've got an Islamic minyan back there, you know? And they're studying the Quran back there. And basically what they are doing and managing to do is to convince a lot of people to become Muslims. But the type of Muslims that they're bringing, the type of Islam that they're bringing from Pakistan. So there is an indigenous group in the Cape area which is fundamentalistically Islamic. What's going to happen with that group in the future remains to be seen. But we know what some of those people are capable of perpetrating if they get into a bad mood. But that's something which is happening. I did see a group of Islamic students on the UCT campus with flags of the Hamas. So at least we know that they're Sunni. You know? At least we know who they're in favor of. They had Hamas flags. And none of them spoke Arabic, because every time I walked up to one of them and spoke a few sentences Arabic, they had no idea of spoken Arabic. But they were vehemently anti-Israel. Some of them were wearing jalabiyas and very, very traditional Islamic dress. But they were a small and vociferous group. So I actually, one day I came to what they call the tent at the University of Cape Town, where the Jewish students actually had a tent where we tried to establish a dialogue, and we got about, I think, 30 or 40 indigenous Africans, and a number of Muslims, by the way. One kid by the name of Muhammad, who was sitting next to me, And we held a discussion. I actually found that it was helpful. They asked good questions, and I felt that we need to try to be as relative as we can and not take too strong positions in order to establish a dialogue with these people. I felt that with those people, we could establish a dialogue. In fact, Muhammad and myself, we ended up hugging and kissing. I can still feel some of his whiskers of his beard as we speak. But we finished on good terms, and I could each time point out our Ethiopian women who were here, and we had a pretty good time that day. The next day, I'm in Cape Town actually trying to raise some money for scholarships for some of these Ethiopian students here and for some South African students who happen to be studying at IDC. We have about 50 South African students, by the way, at IDC Herzliya. Nice kids. Anyway, the long and the short of it, I get this like SOS kind of telephone. You really need to come to campus. The Sarges needs more human resource. There's a huge demonstration taking place on the steps there. And I get there and I see about maybe 250 people listening to a number of vehemently anti-Israel speakers. You're not allowed to interrupt these people. If you do, the security of the university comes and yanks you out. So they don't allow you to answer them, but they can answer you. Okay, so they have interesting debating regulations going on at UCT. Interesting. And so basically, I get there, and I see that all the Jewish kids are actually standing together with the Muslim kids and listening to these speakers. So the first thing I do is I say, hey guys, disengage. Why are you standing there and giving these guys an audience? Okay. Sometimes the Jewish students need some leadership, okay? These two young women are commanders in the Israeli army. Some of those kids in Sarges are 18 and 19 years old. They don't have all that much experience in leading things other than maybe a youth movement, you know, which is cute, but in these situations of tension, I think they sometimes need to get certain training. If it was up to me, I would take 50 Sarges student activists, bring them to Israel for 3 weeks, have stand with us, do a seminar with them, and have them come back and learn the art of demonstrations, learn the art of how to do these things. Anyway, the long and the short of it is that I disengaged those guys. I ended up telling all the Jewish kids, get the heck out of there and go into your tent, which is over there. So they did that. So all of a sudden, those speakers had half the people to speak to than they did before. Now they're preaching to the converted. So you have these Islamic people screaming out stuff at other Islamic people, but they're already converted. And what you notice, by the way, is that it's a mainly Islamic group. It is not necessarily African. And you also notice something else. A vast majority of the people on campus couldn't give a damn either way. It's a small group of extremists on the Islamic side, mainly, at least at UCT, with some Africans, but not that many. And there were sometimes just as many Africans coming to the tent of Sarges as they would be coming to the Islamic thing. I mean, I found myself actually, when those speakers left, I got up and stood on the steps, and I started making the case for Israel in my way. And then all the Jewish kids came with their flags, but this time all of the Muslim students joined them. Now, those Muslim students were frequently screaming out at me, and I was answering them. But when I answered them, the security police came to me and said, you can't answer them when they scream at you. And if you do, we're going to arrest you and all this stuff. So I found myself speaking in a relatively emotional fashion to this audience. And I said, you see the security man over here? That security man just threatened me. Now, an Arab student can say whatever they want to say at Tel Aviv University or Hebrew University or any other place like that. Nobody is going to encroach on their freedom of speech. But your security person over here doesn't like what I'm saying. Now, what I actually asked one of the Muslim people in the audience is, how is your gay community here in Cape Town? Because we have a thriving gay community in Tel Aviv, and I want to know how the Islamic gay community is. Now, I was giving the guy a little bit of a dig in order to kind of like show that we're pluralistic. The security man at UCT accused me of hate crimes as a result of saying that. And so I basically said to him, please arrest me. Please take me away. Please handcuff me. Because if you do, this will be the best PR for IDC Herzliya in the world. Okay? I'm going to send an SMS from jail to all of my donors, I'm going to triple the amount of money in the campaign if you do this. I mean, not everybody understood my sense of humor. Okay? Now, the second thing that I wanted to share with you is that I believe that the future of making the case for Israel is with the Christian community of South Africa. I had a chance to speak to the second or third person in command of the Dutch Reformed Church when I was down there. But he's a white guy. I think our future is with the African black evangelical types. Pastor Hagee is coming from Texas to speak in Johannesburg. He's going to fill a stadium with these African evangelical types. We need these types who believe in the Old Testament. We need these types who believe in the Holy Land. We need these people to be imbued with the same thing the 100 million evangelicals are imbued with in the Midwest. And I'm not looking here to become some liberal, and I don't care what they think about abortion, and I don't care what they think about gun control, and I'm not interested in the least if they like gay people or don't like gay people. I'm interested in these very religious Christians, and the more poverty there is in South Africa, I think there's also a chance that Christianity can flourish in this poverty, and that it can bring more people to church. So I'm in favor of greater Christianity in South Africa. I'm in favor of classic and evangelical Christianity in South Africa, and I found in some conference that I participated in Johannesburg with a whole bunch of these people that that in my opinion there's great potential there. There's great potential there because of that one area of the Holy Land and their belief that Jesus will reappear if there's a strong Jewish community in the Holy Land. And what I say sometimes to a lot of people is that I really don't care if they believe that. Because believe me, if Jesus appears, and the guy looks like that guy, the Michelangelo thing, you know, with the long blonde hair, and the guy looks like Jesus, speaks like Jesus, you know, hey, I'm there. But, you know, if it happens to be the local Jewish butcher, you know, from Ra'anana here, okay, and he happens to come, and it's him, then he's the Messiah. You know, whoever appears on the white donkey is fine with me. So if there are going to be millions of African Christians believing in this, we should just go with the flow, in my view. And so my view would be that we should cultivate these guys, bring many of their leaders to Israel. Because in my view, it's going to be difficult to do this on a governmental basis. On a governmental basis, it's going to be difficult to do it. I'll leave that to the Israeli ambassador. Let the Israeli ambassador and all the diplomats deal with that. At the end of the day, it's people to people. And if there are going to be millions of future voters in South Africa who believe in this crazy thing, like the evangelists do, by the way, in the States, I mean, you have no idea the kind of support that these evangelists give the state of Israel in the States. And without these evangelists in the States, we're dead meat. Okay, we need these guys. And so therefore, I don't feel like I'm selling something down selling myself cheaply. I'm just saying that's something I identified in South Africa. It's going to be very, very difficult to convince the South African government to change all of its views with the present ideology that it has. Yes, we can bring irrigation techniques, and yes, we can have some trade and everything else, but they all forget that the biggest trader with apartheid South Africa was Saudi Arabia and Iran. And the greatest trade that ever took place between South Africa and any foreign country were between Islamic countries who sold oil to South Africa. And Israel was a minuscule, by the way, percentage of it. I'm not proud of the fact that we did. I'm not saying that, okay? But I'm just saying that they like to pick on Israel. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I don't think that we've revolutionized anything. I don't think we've changed anything. I just think that if we go once a year and we bring these kids, we can make a little bit of a dent. I think Sodges needs a lot of help. There are not enough Jews on campus who give a damn and care. And the greatest Jewish leaders amongst the youth are not on the campus. They're not on the campus. They study on the campus, but they're not there when you need them. And I think most of the Jewish kids in South Africa today are indifferent and really don't consider themselves to be avowed Zionists. It's not the way it used to be when you guys lived in South Africa, some of you. Okay, so I think all we can do to help the Sodges kids, we should do. So that's all I have to say at this stage.